posture is important. Hello and welcome to the Freakish Lemon video podcast. I am your host, the Freakish Lemon. I go by Adrian. I use masculine pronouns. Welcome any new viewers. Thank you so much for clicking on whatever you clicked on to get here. And welcome back any returning viewers. Thank you so much for following along with this stuff that I do. I appreciate your support. This is a crafty type podcast coming to you from the Northwest Hills of Connecticut, and show notes for this episode and all episodes can be found at freakishlemon.com. We also have a group on Ravelry. If you would like to come join us there, just search Freakish Lemon in the Groups tab and you will find us. And you can follow me at all the fun places like Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and Ravelry as Freakish Lemon. Links to all those things will be in the down bar here on YouTube or somewhere around here if you're watching this somewhere else. And if you do want to follow along with what I do with this podcast and or whatever other videos I do, feel free to hit that little subscribe button here on YouTube so you know when I post a new video. I find it to be helpful when I watch things, so, you know, if you want. I'm filming this on Tuesday, December 19th. Which is unusual for me. I was gonna film Sunday, but Friday night was The Last Jedi, which I will talk about later, that I stayed out late for. And then Saturday night was my friend's Christmas party that I stayed out very late for. So by Sunday, I was asleep. Just sleeping. I was awake for the drive home from my sister's apartment. That was really it. And then I was gonna film yesterday, but I'm filming today because I have this week off of work. I had time to take, and I couldn't take it at my usual time because of the office move, so taking the week before Christmas. So I can do this, and I won't be completely brain dead filming this at night on a Tuesday. Because I haven't been at work. But we actually start this podcast off with a little bit of podcast stuff. Hang on one moment. And I'm back. It occurred to me just then that this is probably going to be the last episode in 2017 due to uploading and filming times and things. And because I do this kind of every 2 weeks. Sorry. Just got up and ran to my craft room. So, speaking is difficult. The Blanket Make-Along 2017 is coming to an end soon, which brings us to our last prize drawing. And you guys ought to see the prizes for the last prize drawing. So there are 2 physical prize packages, and I think there's still a Ravelry pattern download up for grabs. So let me show you the first one. The first prize package will consist of this bag of 100 Ravens yarn poppers, which are all these coordinating mini skeins from 100 Ravens yarn, who are fantastic, and I love them. This full skein of, what's the actual yarn called? Come back. Oh, I remember this. I had problems pronouncing it. Araucania yarn. Huasco. It's not going to focus on that. Focus on that. Poke. There we go. My pronunciation is not the best. It's a 100% extra fine merino wool. It's a fingering weight wool. And I think there's a Yes, there's a free pattern and suggestions on the reverse because I got this as a prize at the yarn crawl last year. But so, yarn poppers, skein of yarn, and this quilted Forgot what you call them. DPN cozy that I made a while back. So this is the first prize package. Crinkle, crinkle. Put it back in the bag so I don't lose anything. And the second prize package, oh. We do have a $10 Ravelry pattern still up for grabs. That's what this post-it is for. So we do have a $10 Ravelry pattern as a prize. And then the second prize package is this. It's a lot of text. A series of unfortunate mini skeins by Once Upon a Corgi Handmade. If you enjoy knitting, please find a more pleasant set. This set is filled with sadness and the most unfortunate minis. And it is 12 10-gram minis. They're 40 yards each. It's a total of 120 grams. On the Audrey base, which is the 80% superwash BFL and 20% nylon. So all of the, I think all except one of the series of Unfortunate Events club colorways, because one of them was a self-striping. So this, and it's been a long time since you guys have seen this. But that mini skein set, and it's very wrinkly because it's been folded up. This blanket-sized duffel project bag that I made. This duffel bag has 4 pockets. Big sturdy zipper that opens over the side. Nice big blanket-sized project bag. And now I get to try to fold this back up to fit into this bag so that it's shipping sized. So those are the 2 items in the second physical prize package. So, you can definitely head on over to the Ravelry group and check out the details there and enter, but basically, work on a blanket in 2017. You don't have to start one, you don't have to finish one, you just have to be working on a blanket. Could be any craft at all, just make some progress on a blanket. You could enter like at your New Year's Eve party at 11 o'clock at night with a blanket that you're working on while you're watching the New Year's thingamajig. Totally counts. Yeah, and then I'll do random prize drawing the episode after New Year's. So that's very exciting. There's been a lot of blanket progress. Lots of people have been working on blankets. Lots of blanket work has been getting done. So that's fantastic. And that's the only along we're doing at the moment. If you guys have any other ideas for make-alongs, I thought about maybe in the new year doing a quilt along. Would you guys be interested in doing a quilt along with me? I mean, I have like only the vaguest notion of what we'd be doing, but like, would you guys be interested in doing a quilt along? Are there enough quilters in my audience? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below here on YouTube or in the thread on Ravelry or wherever if you're interested in doing a quilt along, because I've kind of got quilting on the brain right now. Yes. which moves us on to a smidge of life stuff. First bullet point is the office move. We are in the new office at my real life job. I'm okay with the new building now that we've been there for a while. I know where I'm eating lunch. I know where I'm taking my breaks. I know where I'm parking my car. Still a smidge nervous about that because we didn't have our proper commuter stuff in place. At the time, it was just a separate check for the amount of money to cover monthly parking, instead of the commuter account thing that we're doing now. So I'm a smidge nervous because that's supposed to be paying for January pretty soon. And I gotta go talk to those parking people about when I need to pick up my little card that goes in my window. Stressful. But we're settling in. Not happy with the desks we're in or the office layout. But such is life. Second bullet point is my hands. I think I had just had the EMG done when I last filmed the podcast, I think. I don't know. It's been rough trying to figure out when I did things, because I know there was a 3-week stretch in there somewhere. But, yeah, the doctor had me do an EMG, which is a test to see how your nerves react, which is a very strange test. Brief description. He basically takes like a fancy zapper machine and for the first part of the test just like starts sticking it on your hand. It's like the Luke hand test when he gets his hand cut off and they put the new robot hand in and the droid pokes him to test his reflexes, only it's with a tiny little zappy machine. So it's like zapping, your whole hand goes like yeah. Which started to hurt after a while because it's just your hand constantly going like this, because he has to test like each point for each finger and then up the arm and in your elbows, and it's very weird. And then the other part of it is he takes a sensor needle, which is a very, very thin needle, and for my test he had 3 different points that he measured. It was like here and here, like in my arm up here somewhere. And that one wasn't too bad for me. The only one for that one is actually putting the needle in. I can't watch that happen, so that was fine. And then it feels like a Geiger counter sounds. And that's measuring, I think it's the muscle conductivity. It's a very weird test. But results came back negative, so I have no nerve damage in my hands, which is very good. And also points to not actually having carpal tunnel syndrome. It's just a one-time injury problem. So, also good news. My hands are doing a lot better. The doc gave me to go ahead to try a little bit of knitting, and I have been trying a little bit of knitting, but my hands are still at a point where they tire easily, and I don't want to push it, so I'm trying to, you know, be good about listening to my body when it says, no, that's enough for tonight. Just trying to have like a designated time of the day where I can do a little bit of knitting. But that's much better than no knitting at all, which is how I'm feeling about it, and hoping that morale boost will continue. That's really it. We've been doing Christmas things. Trees are decorated. My little tree is decorated. All the office is decorated now that we've moved. Went to a friend's Christmas party, like I said. Anything else? I don't think so. So let's move on to the crafty stuff. Finished objects. I have 3 bullet points, which is very exciting. The first thing is a needle felting project at New England Sheep and Wool. I had bought this. Oh, so glary. So much glare. This needle felting kit from Going Gnome for a St. Nicholas. You can see I have stuff left over, but there's enough room that I just put all my needle felting stuff into this canister, which is a great way to store it. And I made my little St. Nicholas. I made a different St. Nicholas than what is shown here. See, this one has like a torso. This one does not. It's like a little dwarf St. Nicholas, which is fine. It's the St. Nicholas of Erebor. Erebor's from Lord of the Rings, if you don't know. But yeah, it's this little squat, fat St. Nick. Which was a lot more fun since I had a guide to work from. So I might make another one. I do have roving that I can use for needle felting. And I also have stuff left over from this, so I might just make like a miniature one out of the stuff left over, but oh my god. I thought this wasn't going to come together at all. Like, I had the base of it and I was like, oh, this looks terrible. And honestly, I completely doubted it until I put the beard on it. And then I was like, yep, yes. It's delightful. It is delightful. He's just like holding his beard up. I love it. I love it. This might have turned me into an occasional needle felter. Oh, it's so great. Let me put this away so I don't squish him. And then I had been spinning on, where did it go? It's in here somewhere, since I'm seated on the floor. The black alpaca from Alpaca Obsession for my hand-spun alpaca shawl. Let me kick those over so I have room to stretch my legs. So I finished the black alpaca. It's been washed and set and everything, and while I'm increasingly annoyed with spinning alpaca on its own, I do love hand-spun alpaca when it's finished. So that is a finished object. And then the third thing is the first simple shawl in my maybe simple shawl machine knitting design project, which is this asymmetrical shawl, which I knit on my Silver Reed LK150 with Blue Ridge Yarns Kaleidoscope in these 3 variegated Halloween colors. So it's black and purple, green and purple, and orange. No, black and purple, black and green, black and orange, and a skein of Plymouth Galway worsted in black to break up the colors. So this is what it looks like. This here is my cast off edge, which it does curl up because it's a Mosley stockinette shawl, but my my hand knit asymmetrical shawls also do that, so not a big deal. It's nice and long, and this is in worsted weight, so it's nice and squishy. I did block the hell out of it, because I did knit this at a kind of loose gauge for, I did this on dial 6 on my knitting machine, which doesn't mean anything to you unless you have one of those, but like it's enough that you can see through it when it's been blocked out. It's a bit of a screen. But I really enjoy it. I'm not the best at wearing asymmetrical shawls. I'm not the best at wearing any shawls because I'm clumsy and ridiculous. And yes, I did finish this in time for Christmas. But I enjoy it. It's so very Halloween-y. I wore it around today because it dried overnight, and I'm happy with it. And I'm definitely happy with having this as a finished design for simple shawl designs, because it's a great simple shawl to do on a knitting machine, except that you have to, because there's an increase on one side, or a decrease on one side and an increase on the other side, it travels across your machine, so you have to occasionally move it back, which is a pain, but such is the way of knitting on a machine. So that's exciting. And now it will curl up on my bed until I finish this podcast. And then I've been working on a bunch of stuff. So for my works in progress, I do still have the mystery fleece spin listed on here. I have been working on the mystery fleece spin, but it just looks like more undyed fleece on a bobbin. So I didn't bring it up here to show you. I have been working on my weaving project, and I finished the third panel in my weaving project. So for a reminder, this is the first panel of my weaving project. This is going to be either a blanket or a shawl or interchangeable piece of rectangle. So this is the first strip. And then this is the second strip, which is looking very bright on camera. It's not quite that bright in real life. This is more of a kind of mauvey purple, where the darker bits are, like there. And then I have finished the third, which the warp is Once Upon a Corgi Frosted Cranberries, and the weft is some hand-dyed yarn by me, where it was originally part of the Great August Dye Experiment of 2015, and then I didn't like it later, and so I re-dyed it. But I really like how this looks, because Frosted Cranberries is variegated, so you can see vertically like where the actual cranberry colors are. It's actually really cool to look at. So I am now on the fourth panel of this thing, which is, if I remember, I'll put some video here of what it looks like on the loom. But if not, I'm sure you'll see it on Instagram soon, so follow me there if you want to see what it is, definitely. But it's warped with Sincere Sheep Tenacious, their Tenacious base, the 100% Superwash Merino base, in the up and down button colorway, which was a colorway for the Kickstarter campaign for the Skein Minder, and some very old hand spun by me. I don't recall what the fiber content is, but I was calling it The Last Son of Krypton, because one ply is blues and the other ply is yellows and reds. And that's looking really cool woven up. I'm excited about what that's going to look like. And then, since I've been able to pick up my knitting, I started with the most encouraging project first, which is a pair of mittens I was working on. Worsted weight mittens. So if I can only do 5 rows, it still looks like progress. These are the Dwarven Mittens by Ginger Monkey Knits. And And last time I was able to knit, I had finished one mitten, and then I had cast on and done one row of the second mitten. And I am halfway up the hand part of the second mitten now, which is very exciting because this will be my second pair of mittens. I need more than one pair of mittens because taking the dog out in the snow, although the snow is melting now, but taking the dog out in the snow means you always have one wet pair of mittens. So you need at least two so one can dry while you're outside with her with the other pair. So I'm very excited about it. I put my Sucre Miniatures Halloween cookie plate on there, and that's in the row where it was, where I had left off when I had hurt my hands. So I've done all of that since being able to knit again, which is very exciting. And when you dedicate your time to one project, you get a lot done. I know it should be common sense, but it's surprising every single time. And then I did something a little crazy because all of my projects were stressing me out because I can work on them now, but they're still, for the most part, just sitting there because I can't do things all the time. And my crochet blankets were stressing me out. And it occurred to me that I hadn't been crocheting on either of them, even when I could, because I'm not really fond of crocheting at a fingering weight. I have been a crocheter longer than a knitter, and it's always been worsted weight projects. So it felt really alien to me crocheting on fingering weight. I wasn't enjoying it. It was fiddly sometimes, especially to get a gauge that I liked. I was working on a USB, which is a 2.25 millimeter hook, which is a small hook. Like, you're getting pretty small when you get to that size hook. So I ripped out my fingering weight granny stripe blanket and my fingering weight corner to corner blanket. And I've come up with a new strategy for doing scrap fingering weight blankets. So I'm planning on doing both the granny stripe and the corner to corner, but I'm starting with the granny stripe because I love that pattern and I have not made one for me yet. So what I'm doing is I've got all my magic cakes and magic balls and all that situated in this this tote bag by Amrit Brar. Oh no. Which is not quite big enough for this, but this is not a project that's really leaving the house, and if it is, I will put what I need into a different project bag. So I've got, this is what I'm starting with. This is the Legacy Fiber Arts Advent Calendar half minis from last year that I split with Gabby from Once Upon a Corgi. And I am marling it with black Knit Picks fingering, or Knit Picks stroll fingering, because that's readily available. I have 3 of these 50-gram skeins of it to start with, and it's really easy for me to get more. And I am marling the two together. Now I'm using a size G hook, which is a 4.25 millimeter hook. And this is what it's looking like. It's a little bit of nothing. I did the chainless foundation row, which I do have a tutorial for, which you can find on my channel. And I've started in on the second row, and I'm actually really enjoying how these colors are playing with the black. I mean, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but when I'm crocheting with it, I notice the colors more because they're always next to black. I feel like that'll be a fun way to make this kind of cohesive blanket and also make it less pastel. I love the colors of these mini skeins, but I was kind of not loving my previous granny stripe crochet blanket just because of the colors, because it was not my colors. But I think marling the yarns really kind of make it mine. I don't know how many this is. I went for about the width of a twin size bed. So that's the start of that. And this will probably go sit by itself for a while so I can finish my mittens, but I've frogged both those blankets and now they're ready to go as the granny stripe, and then after the granny stripe, the corner to corner. And that's really it for craft stuff that I can talk about. I've been doing a lot of craft stuff, but there was some Christmas present making in there a little bit, so I can't tell you about that stuff. So we're gonna go, and I haven't bought anything new that's worth talking about. I mean, today I bought some quilt batting because there was a coupon for 60% off quilt batting at Joann's, but it's just quilt batting. and I shouldn't be buying things, but I did make a bunch of purchases on Etsy the other day because I was feeling a little left out with the advent calendar minis this year. Partially because I couldn't really knit for a lot of the time, and partially because I didn't have an advent calendar full of minis. So what I did is I went to Michael's when they had a coupon and I bought 24 small muslin bags, and I have the tags left over from the Legacy Fiber Arts advent calendar from last year, numbered, and I went onto Etsy, found a bunch of dyers that I had some interest in who had mini skeins available, and I bought a bunch of mini skeins. And they are slowly arriving in the house, and as they arrive at the house, I am shoving them into those little muslin bags. And then when they're all filled, I will jumble them up and number them, and then put them away and forget about them until next year. So it will be a complete surprise to me when I open these up. In fact, it will probably be a surprise when I pull out my Christmas stuff next year, and I go, what's this box of, oh, hello, an advent calendar. And I'll probably find it like the 6th of December. But that's what I'm doing. So I'm not going to show you those minis, just so it'll make it easier for me to forget what colors they are. So that's what I'm doing right now. And that's really it for that kind of stuff. So we're going to move on to other stuff, and of course I'm going to start with stuff that I am watching. First and foremost, I have watched Star Wars: The Last Jedi. No spoilers will be said here on this podcast, okay? No spoilers will be said. I will say that I enjoyed myself in the theater. I will say that I think some things could be more polished, and I think there's some writing in this that's not my favorite. But it's definitely an okay movie. I do need to see it again in order to really dig into it, but I had a good time. So if you want to tell me what you thought about The Last Jedi, if you're going to be commenting here below on YouTube or here on the Ravelry group, please keep your comments non-spoilery so that we don't accidentally spoil anybody else who hasn't seen it yet. If you want to talk spoilers with me, send me a private message on Instagram, on Ravelry, Twitter, Tumblr, any of those places where you can send messages. And I will gladly talk Star Wars with you all day, every day, constantly. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts. And a reminder, if anybody wasn't happy with the film, that you're never going to be happy if you're going to expect it to be like what you've been planning in your brain for the past 2 years, since The Force Awakens came out. And also, fan fiction fixes everything. So if you didn't like something, wait a smidge. There will be fanfic to make that thing that you didn't like not happen. Like, that's always the case. There will always be fanfic to fix something that somebody thought didn't work. I finally started watching Star Wars Rebels Season 4. I had forgotten when it started, and then I kept forgetting to buy it, so I finally bought it on Amazon, and I'm starting it on the season. I love that show so much. And then I started watching The Midnight Quilt Show, which is a show here on YouTube put on by Craftsy and hosted by Angela Walters. It's a 15-minute-ish quilt show. It's really funny, and there's some really spectacular quilts that look really impressive but aren't that hard to do. There are some more challenging ones, but there's like an array of skill level. And she has a lot of like tips and tricks on how to get things working the way you want to. And she also provides quilting guides for the quilts. So if you're a free motion quilter, she has like she has like an easy version and a hard version of different quilting patterns you can actually do on your quilt. So that's really, really cool. And I'm really enjoying it. Stuff I'm listening to. I'm still listening to Outbound Flight by Timothy Zahn, narrated by Jonathan Davis, which is a Star Wars book in the prequel eras prior to the Clone Wars. Anakin's about 14 in this, I think. But yeah, still listening to that. I don't remember how far I got in it, because then I started listening to Iron Fist, which is the show on Netflix, with the description audio turned on. I finished that. It was okay. Definitely glad I wasn't watching it with my eyeballs, because I would have been bored out of my skull. And then I listened to The Defenders on Netflix with the descriptive audio turned on. Which I think was better than Iron Fist, but not as good as Luke Cage or Jessica Jones or Daredevil. Like, I think it... I don't know. I don't feel like it quite worked as well as it could have. And then I started listening to a new audiobook called The Drowning Girl by Caitlin R. Kiernan, and it's narrated by Susie Jackson. Bit of a departure for me because it's not a Star Wars book. It's a book from the point of view of this young woman who has hereditary schizophrenia and has an encounter with someone that seems to be outside of the norm, but she doesn't necessarily trust her own perceptions because of the schizophrenia. It's a really interesting book narratively, because it's not linear. It's a kind of stream of consciousness writing, but it's really good. The way she talks about her mother and her grandmother, and about things that stick in her brain, and about her relationship with her girlfriend, and how all these things affect each other. in her life is really, really interesting. I'm nearly done with it. I think I have 2 more chapters to go, and I'm really enjoying listening to it. I definitely recommend it. If you're at all interested in kind of creative storytelling. This is not a beginning, middle, end story. It's kind of meandering. But I think definitely worth a listen. Or read, because it is a physical book as well. You can do that. But I feel like it's really personal because it's being spoken aloud. It's spoken aloud with a lot of subjects that aren't necessarily spoken aloud about, which I think has an impact that reading it in the book would not necessarily have for me. And then stuff I'm reading. Oh, did I bring it down here? I didn't, and I'm not going to go get it now, but I finished one of those children's Star Wars books. Finally. It's the last of the Jedi series. It's book 2, Dark Warning by Jude Watson. I've got book 4 behind me so you can get an idea. It's one of these little guys. Finally finished one of those. Yeah, there was a week, is it just before the move? Just before the office move? Where I was very, very stressed about the office move, and it was better for me not to have my phone on before I went to bed, so I actually finished a book to put myself to sleep so that I wouldn't stay up all night freaking out about stuff. So that's great. And then I've also been reading a lot of fan fiction because that's what I do. A new fic that I read recently was called And the Next by Yenna Blue. I'm not sure how you pronounce this name. But it's a Groundhog Day type situation with Jyn Erso for the events of Rogue One. So she keeps reliving them over and over and over, and she keeps trying to change it so that they succeed, so that people will live, so that her father doesn't die, so that this happens and this happens. And there's a really fun twist on this one, because there's Force shenanigans. So sometimes other people also remember the loops, but not consistently, and she's trying to figure out the rules of who remembers and when and why they remember, which leads to some really, really interesting go-rounds. I think this one's still ongoing, but it's got at least 11 chapters, and each chapter is a loop, so it's really great if you like kind of time loop stories. And then I reread this one because a new chapter came out, and I like to reread this one often. It's called Here Comes Another One by Croatoan and Mary. It's a modern, non-magical alternate universe where a teenage Sirius Black in Cornwall in the UK texts the wrong number and ends up connecting with Cornwall, Canada teen Remus Lupin, and they fall in love, and it's super cute and hilarious and primarily funny text conversations, and it's really good. It's one of those fics that I read to just have good feelings, so I definitely recommend that. And then I've been catching up with Leo and Terra Serpentes by Aeternum, I think is how you pronounce that name. And I finally got around to catching up on year 6 of this. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but it's one of those Harry gets sorted into Slytherin fics, and Snape ends up adopting him because Harry's life is terrible. and anybody would be better than the Dursleys. But it ends up being really good for him, and it's going through every year at Hogwarts, so they just finished up year 6 a month ago, I think. So I caught up on that, which was really good. And then I've kind of been just rereading stuff. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Lots of fanfic and a little bit of knitting. So that's gonna do it for this podcast episode. So, how do I sign off? I've forgotten what I do. Show notes and links to everything will be over at freakishlemon.com. You can join us over at the Ravelry group. Just search Freakish Lemon in the Groups tab. Come check out the blanket make-along before it's too late. You can follow me as Freakish Lemon at all the fun places like Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and Ravelry if you want to follow me other places. Tumblr is especially good if you want Star Wars things, because I reblog the Star Wars things. And then links to all these things will be in the down bar here on YouTube, or somewhere around here if you're watching this somewhere else. And if you want to follow along with what I'm doing here, with the podcast, with other videos, please consider hitting that subscribe button down there so you don't miss anything if you want. It's an option. So we're gonna call it a night, and I'm gonna let you go. Goodbye.